eventually gave in. He was their only child after all. Every morning, his mother marked his forehead with kajal, which is black coal, a traditional gesture meant to protect children from the evil eye. She loved him deeply, believing she was keeping him safe. But the truth was horrifying. The boy she adored was already taking lives. To the adults around him, Amarjeet seemed like an innocent, smiling kid. Neighbours called him sweet and playful. Even the police later said he smiled a lot during questioning. Amarjeet always smiled, even when you asked him a question. He'd answer with that same smile. Even while telling the story of how he killed someone, he smiled. He smiled when he asked for cookies. His friends were the only ones who felt something off. Kids usually learn social skills through messing around. They learn how to joke without being cruel, how to wrestle without turning it into a real fight. But Amarjeet's games followed a different script. Think of adults who lack social skills. They cross lines, say things that hurt, and then laugh like it's normal. Amarjeet did the same, but in a childish way. His actions weren't playful, they were disrespectful and unsettling. His friends said he was overly aggressive. There was something obvious about him they couldn't name. They were kids, they couldn't confront him properly. In roughhousing, they'd shove and laugh. Amarjeet would land heavy punches like he wanted to actually hurt someone, and he'd laugh while doing it. He used that confusion to his advantage. If someone ever told him, "You're playing wrong, you're hurting us," he'd shrug and say, "I'm doing what you're doing, you punch, we laugh, I punch and laugh." The way he hit, the delight in causing pain, felt like he wanted to see his friends suffer. Luckily he was thin and small, so nobody was seriously hurt, but they all remembered it as unpredictable, a little wild, and honestly scary. Once they planned to run to a little river near the houses and swim. Then they noticed Amarjeet wasn't with them. They called him saying, "Come play with us, we're going to the river, it'll be fun," and that moment stuck with them. Amarjeet didn't go. He just stood there, staring at them with a strange look. They came closer and asked why he wouldn't play. He said quietly, "Honestly, I don't feel like playing right now." His friends begged, "Why won't you play with us? Are you not our friend anymore? We haven't gone swimming in ages. Come on, it'll be fun." Suddenly, Amarjeet snapped. He jumped up and screamed with everything he had. When I say screamed, don't picture a little yelp. His neck veins popped. His face flushed. His friends were genuinely scared and ran. Their mood was too weird and frightening, which can you imagine as a kid, like your friend doing that? Like, this is literally terrifying. What the heck? I think, like, after that, like, I don't think, like, they would want to be his friend anymore. Like, it would just be terrifying. After that, Amarjeet stopped playing with them. He pulled away and got lonelier every day. By 7 or 8, his idea of fun was climbing a tree and sitting there for hours. If someone walked under it, he'd just stare at them, or he'd stay home and play alone with his toys. Every report I found said Amarjeet was a bully. Everyone said the same thing, but his mother refused to see it, which shows how attached and protective she was, and that likely played a big role in the case because she spoiled him. You've seen parents who shield their kids from reality and can't accept that they're a problem, right? His mother was like that. This is called parental denial. Parents ignore upsetting signs because it hurts to admit their child has an issue. They devalue the evidence and say, "I want my kid to be fine, so I'll look past this." That makes the child spoiled in the wrong way. When the guardian won't set boundaries or correct violent behaviour and instead just protects or excuses it, The next day she took him to a Hindu priest and got a sacred protective charm. She believed it would ward off harm and bless him. She gave it to Amarjeet and told him to keep it with him so no one would hurt him. Amarjeet said, "No, Mom, it's gross and embarrassing. I don't want to carry it." Amarjeet's mother was deeply religious. She believed that sacred objects could protect her son from evil. But since Amarjeet refused to carry the charm, what could have been a simple disagreement turned into a full argument. Instead of respecting his choice, she insisted, saying this came from the Hindu temple. It represents love, kindness and sacrifice. It's a gift from God. Some believe this moment planted the seed for Amarjeet's narcissistic traits. Of course, there's no scientific proof of that. It's just speculation. But it is possible that in his young mind he started thinking, I have something special that gives me power. I'm different. I'm above others. Still, we can't say for sure. He was just 8. No one really knows what goes on inside the mind of a child that age. His parents adored him, but they were under huge pressure. His father was a daily wage labourer, the kind who'd go from farm to farm asking, "Need help today?" If the answer was yes, he worked. If not, there was no money. Even when he did work, it barely covered food. On average, he made around $3 a day, which is insane, which meant they often didn't know where their next meal would come from. Yet they still spoiled Amarjeet, buying toys and giving him everything he asked for. Saying no always triggered his rage, so they avoided her. His parents were traditional, the kind who saw having a son as the ultimate blessing. To them, sons were heirs, meant to stay home, marry, have children and care for their aging parents. Daughters, on the other hand, were seen as temporary gifts, loved but designed to leave. That is so backwards. Ugh, I know, it's like, I don't know how old this case is, but like how long ago, and obviously it's India, so I don't know, but like, that's just insane to me. But anyway, so naturally, Amarjeet was spoiled beyond measure. Then one day his aunt Meena came to visit, exhausted and desperate. "Can you please take care of my baby for a month?" she asked. She had a 6-month child and was struggling badly. No one helped her, not her husband and not either family. Financial stress piled on top of emotional exhaustion. Finally, Meena found a cleaning job, a job cleaning houses in the city. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid something. She couldn't bring her baby to work. The shifts were long, starting early in the morning and often stretching past 7 or 8 p.m. Sometimes she worked until midnight, then woke up before dawn to do it all over again. There were no weekends, no breaks, just endless days of labour. Despite all the exhausting hours and endless labour, Meena barely earned enough to survive. At best, she made $35 to $100 a month, which wasn't much, but it was all she had. And even though no mother ever wants to leave her baby behind, this was the only way Meena could save some money and eventually create a better life for her child. Some of you might wonder, if they were that poor, why have a baby at all? But here's the thing, in Indian culture, having children is almost an obligation, especially in rural or traditional families. It's expected that once you marry, you must have kids, not just one, sometimes several. If you don't, people gossip, shame you and say your life lacks blessing. Family pressure piles up until it doesn't feel like a choice anymore. So even those struggling to afford food still end up having children, believing that a baby brings prosperity. Reality couldn't be further from that, but the belief runs deep. It's exactly how it was for Meena, and even for Amarjeet's own parents. Both families lived in extreme poverty, yet both chose to have children because in their eyes it was simply what people people do. It made sense for Mina to leave her baby with Parole, Amarjeet's mother. I mean, who could she trust more than her own sister? Besides, Parole was pregnant herself, so she'd soon be breastfeeding anyway, which made caring for another infant easier. Still, Parole hesitated. I don't know, Mina. We already have so many bills, so much debt. We barely make enough to eat. I don't know if we can afford to feed another mouth. I'd love to help you, but now I'm about to give birth myself. Mina tried to reassure her. Please don't worry, if someone can watch my baby, I can work hours. I'll even give you a little money every week. Eventually, the two sisters reached an agreement. Parole would take care of Mina's baby for a while. A few days later, Mina returned with their child. We don't know the baby's name. She hugged him tightly, kissed his forehead, whispered a prayer, and marked a tiny black dot between his brows. A traditional Indian charm for protection. Then she left, heartbroken but convinced she was making the only right choice she had. In Mina's mind, her baby was in the safest possible hands. Her sister was kind, calm, and experienced. She believed Parole could care for her baby even better than she could herself. She had no idea that by leaving him in the house, she just handed him to India's youngest serial killer. The first few weeks after the baby arrived were peaceful. Parole slowly got used to having him around. In fact, she even thought it was a good thing, like practice before her own baby arrived. It had been 7 years since Amarjeet was a newborn, and this little guest felt like a refresher course in motherhood. We went into the storage room, pulled out Amarjeet's old crib, baby clothes and toys, and reused them for the infant. Mina had left some extra supplies too. Everything was fine, until one morning, Parole realised she'd run out of vegetables for cooking. She gently placed the baby in the cradle and turned to her son. Watch him for a bit, Amarjeet. I'll just run down the street to buy some greens and be right back. It won't take long. The shop was nearby, just a quick walk away. Amarjeet nodded casually and said, okay, no problem. As soon as the door closed, Amarjeet walked toward the cradle. The baby was asleep, breathing softly. Amarjeet stared at him for a few seconds and reached out and pinched his cheek. Harder than a pinch, then he froze for a moment, eyes locked on the tiny face. Suddenly he pulled back his hand and slapped the baby. The sound cracked through the small house. The infant let out a sharp, painful cry, but Amarjeet just smiled. That sound seemed to satisfy him. It was like he'd achieved something. He slapped the baby again and again, each time harder. His nails scraped across the infant's skin, leaving red marks. The baby's screams grew weaker until they became a broken, breathless whimper. Later, during police questioning, Amarjeet called it a joke. He said we were just playing, but by the end of his so-called joke, he'd pressed his fingers into the baby's neck, curious to see how deep he'd have to go before blood appeared. When that didn't happen, he wrapped both hands around the baby's throat and squeezed. Never looked away. He watched as the baby's skin changed colour, his eyes turning red and glassy. The infant couldn't fight back. Newborn's gone. Within 15 to 20 seconds, a baby deprived of air loses consciousness. Death comes soon after, and by the time Parole came back from the market, the house was silent. Fortunately, the baby was already dead before Parole returned from the market. Amarjeet thought, I still have time, Mum hasn't come back. He carried the infant to the backyard. At first he considered leaving him on the grass, but that wasn't enough. He wanted more of a reaction, even though the baby was already gone. God, I can't believe I'm gonna have to say this. I'll read this to you guys, but he found a brick and kept striking the fragile suppose much of the brain tissue had been scattered on the lawn. He shoveled soil over those parts to hide the evidence. Then, as if nothing had happened, he went back inside and resumed playing with his toy cars. The whole thing took less than half an hour, less than 30 minutes. A child committing the most brutal act you can imagine. When Parole returned with the groceries, she dropped the bags and called out cheerfully, "Mum's here, let me look at you." She looked for the 6-month-old and called Amarjeet. There was no answer. She noticed his weird smile, that knowing look like a kid who hides your keys when you're late, mysterious and infuriating. She called again, "Sweetheart, don't you hear me? Where's the baby? Is he in the cradle?" Amarjeet put down his toys without a flicker of panic. He took Parole's hand and led her to the backyard, to the exact spot where he'd buried the infant, and bluntly told her, "I killed him. I hit his head with a brick right here." Parole froze, gasping for air, her body trembling in shock. She couldn't think straight. She had no phone to call anyone. Her husband was out working, and there was no way she could face Mina or the police. No mother could easily turn in her own child, even if that child had just taken her life. Hours passed before Amarjeet's father came home. When Parole told him everything, his reaction was violent. He grabbed his belt and beat Amarjeet nearly to death. The boy collapsed, bleeding, and some say if his father had hit him one more time, Amarjeet wouldn't have survived. His parents walked around the house in panic, arguing about what to do. They were torn between guilt and fear. On one hand, a murder had happened in their home. On the other, they convinced themselves that Amarjeet was just a child, too young to understand what death even meant. Maybe it was just a game gone wrong. But the truth remained, a baby was dead, and they had a body in their backyard. They told themselves calling the police wouldn't bring the baby back, it would only destroy their son's life. "We'll punish him ourselves," they said. "We'll teach him never to do this again." So they decided to hide it, for God's sake, I can't. A month later, Mina returned to visit her baby. She walked into her sister's house and immediately felt the tension. The air was heavy, unnatural. She asked, "Where's my baby? Why are you both acting so strange?" Amarjeet's father knelt before her, eyes wet, and said there had been an accident, that the baby had died while Amarjeet was playing with him. He begged her to believe it wasn't intentional. Parole sat silently, sobbing uncontrollably, whispering between tears. They were just playing, it was an accident. We buried him because the neighbours might find out. Mina's world collapsed. She shook, torn between rage and disbelief. Amarjeet's face, he fell sobbing. The house erupted. Neighbours crowded at the door because the noise was unbearable. Some neighbours barged in without knocking, expecting a robbery or some disaster, and found the family in chaos. A baby dead in the cradle, and Amarjeet being punished, everyone whispering and staring. They tried to calm the father, insisting this must be reported to the police, that brutal as it was, hiding it would only make things worse. The father snarled, "I'll kill him myself," and the neighbours had to physically stop him. Amarjeet sat there, tears on his face, suddenly furious, shouting like a defiant child. "So what? I killed her." His attitude was chillingly casual, like he couldn't understand why anyone treated killing as extraordinary. Whether the neighbours truly believed he had murdered his sister was still uncertain. They decided it was now a family crisis beyond their help. They tried to calm the household, then left. If the neighbours really understood that Amarjeet had killed his own sister and still didn't call the police, that alone is shocking. Even stranger was his parents' behaviour. They went door to door begging everyone, "Please, we are poor, don't tell the police, this is a family matter. We'll handle it ourselves. We're trying to discipline Amarjeet. Believe us, we are suffering, don't ruin our life. If you want to help, stay quiet." Their logic was, we already lost one child. If the police get involved, they'll take Amarjeet away and we'll lose him too. But if we punish him ourselves, this murderous impulse will disappear. He's only 9, maybe he doesn't understand what death means. He'll grow up, find work, marry, have kids, live a normal life, and move past this dark chapter. That thinking is dangerously wrong. Repeated killing is not a bad habit you can beat out. It's a psychiatric emergency that needs specialists, not secrecy. This is a disaster parents must act on. Yet what we saw was the weakest possible response. Like I said before, the family was extremely traditional, obsessed with honour and reputation, terrified of public shame, so they covered up the crime to protect their name, even if that meant protecting a child who'd become a killer. If word got out, they feared social exile. The father might lose work. The whole extended family standing would be damaged, so they convinced themselves victims can't be brought back, and that brutal private punishment would stop it from happening again. One more striking detail, the gap between the first and second killing was only 8 months. He waited just 8 months. Cold phases for serial killers usually run longer, sometimes a year or more, but this was 8 months. And remember, he was only 8. If another infant had been easier to reach, that gap would have been even shorter. Or maybe if his parents hadn't brushed the first murder under the rug, the second might never have happened. Anyway, fast forward a bit. Kashbu was an 8-month-old girl. Her mother didn't even know Amarjeet. She wasn't a neighbour, but looking after Kashbu while working was hard, so she left the baby at a local daycare-like place for a day. That daycare wasn't official, more like a home business. No CCTV, no registration, no safety rules, basically a backyard babysitting setup. Kashbu fell asleep there. Her mum ran errands, came back before the baby's nap ended, and then the child was found, gone, vanished. The spot was quiet, houses usually left unlocked, no one posted at the door, so it wasn't a secure place, just enough for a caretaker to feed or check on kids, not the proper care a licensed centre provides. Now Kashbu was missing. The village panicked. Nobody had seen anyone take her. Nobody had seen a suspicious man, and the baby herself couldn't have wandered off, so they called the police and the search began. News of Kashbu's disappearance spread fast, reaching Amarjeet's house and the neighbouring homes, and neighbours started whispering that the police shouldn't be chasing a suspicious suspicious adult they should be checking Amarjeet. But it wasn't the neighbours or Amarjeet's parents who called the police, it was his uncle. He went to Kashmir's mother and quietly said, "I know what happened. We have a boy in the family with a bad past. He's done terrible things to infants. I think he took your baby. His name is Amarjeet." People believe the uncle because accusing a 7 to 8 year old of not one but multiple murders isn't something you say lightly. Usually that implies evidence. The village turned angry and surrounded Amarjeet's home, demanding the parents hand the child over. Amarjeet's parents begged the crowd to calm down, calling the uncle's claims a joke. Before he's just saying he's just a child, think before you accuse him. Their defense was strange though, because they already knew there's been linked to 2 deaths, so it wasn't far-fetched for others to suspect him in a disappearance. If the neighbours really believed Amarjeet had killed his sister and still didn't call the police, that alone is shocking. Even stranger was his parents' behaviour. Yeah, basically what they said before about begging people, telling them not to say anything, that they're going to handle it, and if they want to help, that everyone should stay quiet in the village. People wouldn't budge. They stood outside the house until the parents dragged Amarjeet out onto the veranda, and the crowd yelled at him to tell the truth. With that same eerie mocking smile he always wore, Amarjeet calmly told the village, "I killed her." The villagers forced him to show where he'd buried Kashbu. They marched him to a small hill with a dirt track, and he pointed. The police hadn't arrived yet. Remember, this was a tiny village without a permanent force. They had to summon officers from the next town, so locals kept Amarjeet from going home, worried that with him free, more children were at risk. When the police finally took him in, he said he wanted to tell the truth because his parents had told him lying was a big sin. That's important. Whenever someone asked him about being a victim, without exception, he answered and admitted it. He treated lying like the worst crime, but killing has nothing. When officers asked why he killed 3 people, he said bluntly, "Because I felt like it." That cold casualness, an 8 or 9-year-old talking about murder like it's a boring fact, shocked everyone. And the question that haunts his case came back: are killers born, made, or both? You can't ignore context. Amarjeet grew up in poor but drowned in. Yes, it was excessive, but that kind of overlove usually harms less than constant abuse. Still, 2 murders by a child is not behaviour you cover up or pretend it's a phase. It's an emergency that needed specialists long before the village had to drag the truth out of him. Amarjeet had a family that adored him. They were strict but loving, always trying to give him what he wanted, even when they couldn't afford it. He lived in a small, tight-knit neighbourhood where everyone knew each other, so as a 7 or 8-year-old he couldn't even grasp the concept of poverty or social class differences. Some people speculated that Amarjeet might have suffered a head injury from falling off a tree, something that could have affected his brain, but millions of people have suffered head trauma and never turned into serial killers. It's rare, not impossible, but definitely not a simple explanation. Now Amarjeet was officially under arrest, accused of 3 murders. His family came from the lowest social class, so his crimes didn't just destroy his own life, they ruined the reputation and future of his entire family. After confessing to the murders, right after asking for a cookie, Amarjeet was charged only for Kashmir's death. His family didn't press charges for the deaths of his sister and cousin, which is shocking considering he'd confessed to them as well. It seemed that in India's legal system, without an official complaint, even a confessed murder could be left unpunished. That's wild. Well, under Indian law, a minor can't be sentenced to death or imprisoned for more than 3 years. They're usually sent to a juvenile reform centre until adulthood, so Amarjeet likely served around 3 years before being transferred to such a facility until he turned 18. And now he's reportedly free, around 23 years old, living under a new name, Amarjeet. house and just smiling like that. It is just